In 1900, a young Greek diver descended 150 feet into the depths of the Aegean Sea and came back trembling, screaming that he had seen a pile of corpses on the ocean floor. He was wrong. What he had found was even more impossible. The most advanced machine of the ancient world, lost for 2,000 years. His name was Elias. He was barely into his 20s. He came from the island of Simi, and he fished for sponges in the most dangerous way there was, sinking to the seafloor inside a heavy canvas suit and a copper helmet, breathing air pumped down through a hose from above. It was Easter of 1900. Captain Demetrius Contis's boat was headed for the coast of Africa when a storm forced it to take shelter near a tiny, almost deserted island called Antikythera between Crete and the Greek mainland. And while they waited for the sea to calm, they decided to dive. Elias went down first. Down there, in the green gloom, he saw shapes that looked like human bodies and horses scattered across the rocks. He surfaced terrified, babbling about dead, naked people on the bottom. The captain figured he was drunk on the air at that depth. So Contis himself put on the suit and went down to see for himself. And he came back with proof in his hands, the bronze arm of a statue. The dead that Elias had seen were not people. They were statues of bronze and marble. An entire ship full of treasure sunk there, in the dark, waiting. What those sponge divers did not know is that they had just found the most important ancient shipwreck ever discovered, and that, among the statues, the jewelry, and the amphory, there was a corroded lump of bronze that would change the history of science. Hold on to this. For more than 1,400 years, no human being would build anything as complex as that rusted clump. Elias and the other divers reported the find to the authorities in Athens, and the Greek government did something unprecedented. It sent the Royal Navy. For the first time in history, a state and its scientists joined forces with sponge divers to raise a shipwreck from the bottom of the sea. It was the birth of underwater archaeology. From November of 1900 until 1901, those same divers from Simi returned to that spot and went down dozens of times. 150 feet, in the year 1900, was very nearly the limit of what a human body could endure. Every descent was a gamble with death. And death collected. One of the divers, Georgios, died. 2 others were left paralyzed. The cause was an enemy no one fully understood at the time. Decompression sickness, the bends, bubbles of gas that form in the blood when you rise too fast from the depths. Even so, Elias and his companions kept bringing treasures to the surface. Bronze statues of incalculable value, marbles, exquisite glass, coins, jewelry. It was the cargo of an enormous Roman merchant ship, wrecked around 60 to 70 years before Christ, most likely sailing from Greece toward Rome. Everything was sent to the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. The statues were the stars of the show. No one paid much attention to a few clumps of greenish bronze, stuck to pieces of rotted wood. They looked like junk. They looked unimportant. For nearly 2 years, they sat forgotten. And here is the twist. That junk was the most revolutionary piece in the entire collection. Young Elias had touched, without knowing it, the object that scientists would call, a century later, the first computer of humankind. In 1902, the piece of bronze began to dry out and crack apart. And that is when a man named Valerios Stais, a director at the museum, looked closely and saw something that took his breath away. Inside the corroded metal, there was a gear, a precision-toothed wheel, in an object 2,000 years old. It made no sense at all. Precision gears like that would not appear in Europe until more than 1,000 years later, in the first mechanical clocks of the Middle Ages. Finding one in a shipwreck from the time of Julius Caesar was like finding a cell phone in an Egyptian tomb. For decades, no one could explain what it was. Some thought it was a navigation instrument. Others, an astronomical clock. There were even those who said the object could not possibly be that old, that it must have fallen there by mistake, centuries later. The piece was simply too inexplicable. Little by little, the scientists grasped the frightening truth. The object did not have one gear. It had dozens of them, meshed into one another in layers, like the movement of a Swiss watch. Today we know that at least 30 bronze gears survived, and the complete mechanism had even more. Each gear had tiny, triangular teeth, cut by hand to a precision of about 2 millimeters. In an age with no machines, no steel, no magnifying lenses, someone, 2,000 years ago, calculated and cut every one of those teeth with their own hands. The object was the size of a shoebox. It fit in your hands. It was made of bronze, sealed in a wooden case, with dials on the front and back, pointers, and a crank on the side. You turned the crank, and the universe moved inside the box. Because that is exactly what the Antikythera Mechanism did. It was an astronomical calculator, a mechanical model of the cosmos. You set a date, turned the crank, and it showed you where the sun, the moon, and the stars would be in the sky on that day, in the past or in the future. On the front was a large dial with the 12 signs of the zodiac and the Egyptian calendar of 365 days. Pointers marked the position of the sun and the moon among the stars. It was a pocket planetarium 1,700 years before the word planetarium even existed. But the most astonishing part was in the details. The machine did not pretend the moon moves at a constant speed. It reproduced the real fact that the moon speeds up and slows down along its orbit, using an ingenious pair of gears with a pin and a slot that imitated that irregular motion. The ancients knew this, and they built a machine that knew it too. There was even a detail no one expected, a small sphere that rotated to show the phases of the moon. Half silvered, half dark, it turned to reveal how much of the moon was lit on any given night. A mechanical model of the lunar phases made of bronze in the time of the Romans. On the back, 2 large spiral dials. The upper one followed the Metonic cycle, 19 years that synchronized the calendar of the sun with that of the moon. That is how the Greeks knew when the next full moon would come, years before it happened. And the lower dial did something that borders on the supernatural for its time. It predicted eclipses. It followed the Saros cycle of about 18 years, with 223 divisions. Looking at the machine, an ancient Greek could know that there would be an eclipse of the sun or the moon, and even predict in what month and in what part of the day it would fall. Think about what that meant. In an age when an eclipse was seen as an omen from the gods, a sign of war or the death of kings, someone had built a bronze box that said, calmly and in advance, "An eclipse is coming, and I know exactly when." And there was more still. A small extra dial tracked the 4-year cycle of the Panhellenic Games, including the Olympic Games of ancient Greece. The same machine that predicted eclipses told you, in the corner, when the next Olympiad would be. Astronomy and sport, on the same gear. Then comes the question that haunts historians to this day. Who, in the name of Zeus, was capable of building such a thing 2,000 years ago? Who had the knowledge of astronomy, of mathematics, and of engineering to design 30 gears that mimic the heavens? The first name that comes up is the greatest genius of antiquity, Archimedes of Syracuse. The Roman writer Cicero recorded that Archimedes had built a mechanical globe that showed the motion of the sun, the moon, and the planets. Archimedes died in 212 before Christ, decades before the machine. But the tradition he created may have carried on. The second name points to the island of Rhodes, a center of astronomy and engineering in the Greek world, and to one man in particular, Hipparchus, perhaps the greatest astronomer of antiquity. The machine uses exactly Hipparchus's theory of the irregular motion of the moon. It is like a signature. There is one more clue hidden in the machine itself. The astronomical events engraved on it work best for a specific latitude, between 33 and 37 degrees north. The island of Rhodes sits right in that band. The machine appears to have been made for the sky of Rhodes. And it was not a single, one-off object. The inscriptions and the sheer perfection show that whoever made it had made others before. The Antikythera Mechanism was not an isolated miracle. It was the product of an entire tradition of Greek engineering that we, for 2,000 years, did not even know existed. But here is the most painful detail of the story. No other machine like it survived. Ancient bronze was almost always melted down and reused. If that ship had not sunk, and if Elias had not dived at that exact spot, we might never have known that the Greeks came so close to the age of machines. For nearly a century, the machine kept its secrets. It was a puzzle of 82 rusted fragments, with gears hidden inside, impossible to see. Touching it meant risking its destruction. The scientists stood in front of a safe they could not open. Then, in 2005, an international project, the Antikythera Mechanism Research Project, brought the technology to the machine. They hauled an 8-ton computed tomography X-ray machine into the Athens Museum, capable of seeing inside solid bronze without touching it. It was like giving a body an X-ray. Suddenly, the scientists could see every hidden gear, count every tooth, map the entire mechanism in 3 dimensions. Layers that had been locked in the metal for 2,000 years appeared on a computer screen. And the biggest surprise came. Inside the fragments, hidden beneath the corrosion, there were inscriptions. Thousands of tiny Greek letters, engraved on the surface of the bronze. It was an instruction manual. The machine came with text explaining what each dial did, written by the very people who built it. The new scans managed to double the amount of text that could be read. Words that no human eye had seen in more than 2,000 years, since the time the machine sank with the ship, reappeared, sharp, in the X-ray images. The machine, quite literally, began to speak. The letters described astronomical cycles, the planets, the colors of eclipses. They confirmed that this was not a toy or an ornament. It was a precision scientific instrument with a clear purpose, to place the entire cosmos in the palm of whoever turned the crank. Now stop and think about the timeline. The Antikythera Mechanism was made around 150 to 100 years before Christ. Comparable precision gears would not reappear in Europe until around the year 1300, in the first astronomical clocks of the cathedrals. That is more than 1,400 years of silence. 1,400 years in which humanity, in terms of precision mechanics, did not come anywhere close again to what those Greeks had already done. Civilizations were born and died in that gap, and no one matched that bronze box. Why was this knowledge lost? Probably because it was rare, expensive, and depended on very few hands. When those workshops closed, when the Hellenistic world was swallowed by Rome and then by chaos, the technique simply vanished. With no surviving manuals, no apprentices, it died. It is an unsettling thought. Human progress is not a straight line that only rises. Sometimes it takes a giant leap, and then falls, and stays fallen for centuries. The Antikythera Mechanism is physical proof that we were once, in some fields, far more advanced than we imagined. And we forgot. Some call the machine out of time, as if it were impossible, but it did not come from aliens, nor from the future. It came from human minds, Greek minds, brilliant minds, minds that understood the sky so well they could turn it into metal and motion. The frightening thing is not that it is alien. It is that it is entirely human. And the shipwreck that Elias helped find has not finished telling its story. More than 100 years later, modern divers returned to that same spot, near Antikythera, with technology the young Greek in the copper helmet could never have dreamed of. They found more. Human bones of those who had been aboard, missing pieces of statues, jewelry, and the structure of the ship, large enough to suggest it carried still more treasure in depths the divers of 1901 could never reach. And the question no one can answer, was there a second machine? The fragments we have do not form the complete device. Pieces may still be down there, in the dark, buried in the sand of the Aegean, waiting for another diver, in another century, to bring them back to the light. Because that is the lesson of Antikythera. What survived did so by pure chance. A ship that sank in the right place, on the right bottom, and a young sponge diver who looked in the right direction. Remove any one of those pieces, and we would never have known the Greeks had built a computer. How much did the ancient world invent that we will never know about? How many brilliant machines were melted down, lost, forgotten? The Antikythera Mechanism is not just an answer. It is a reminder of everything we have probably lost forever. Let us return to Elias, a young sponge diver from a small Greek island, who risked his life 150 feet down for a few drachmas. He was not a scientist. He could not read ancient Greek. He had no idea what an astronomical gear was. And yet, he was the one who went down first. It was his fear, screaming about dead men, on the seafloor that pointed scientists to the most important find in archaeology. The most advanced story of ancient science began with the terror of an ordinary young man facing the dark. His companions paid dearly. One died. Two were left paralyzed to bring 2,000-year-old treasures to the surface. They never knew the scale of what they had recovered. They died without understanding that they had placed in the hands of science the first computer of humankind. Today, the Antikythera Mechanism sits in a display case in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, a few miles from the sea it came out of. Visitors from all over the world stand before those green, silent fragments, never imagining the storm of genius locked inside them. Modern reconstructions, built from the tomography scans, show the machine working. You turn the crank, and the pointers glide. The moon changes phase. The dials mark eclipses and Olympiads. To watch it move is to understand, in a single instant, just how capable the ancients were. And all of it because, on an Easter morning in 1900, a storm forced a boat of sponge divers to take shelter near a forgotten island. If the wind had blown the other way, the machine would still be down there, in the dark, and we would still believe the Greeks had never gone so far. The Antikythera Mechanism changes the way we look at antiquity. We tend to imagine the Greeks as philosophers in togas debating ideas. But they were also engineers. They had workshops, precision tools, and the ambition to capture the universe inside a bronze box. It proves that their theoretical science, the astronomy of Hipparchus, the geometry of Euclid, the genius of Archimedes, did not stay only on papyrus. It became metal. It became a machine. The Greeks did not just think the cosmos. They built it, in pocket scale, with a crank. And it humbles us a little. For centuries, we thought we were always the most advanced that humanity had ever been. The machine says the opposite, that knowledge is fragile, that it can be lost, and that people from 2,000 years ago solved problems it would cost us centuries to solve again. Every time you unlock your phone, remember that it is the distant descendant of a Greek bronze box. The idea of a machine that calculates, that predicts, that models the world in gears, it was already there, at the bottom of the Aegean Sea, waiting for 2,000 years. The astronomers who designed the machine never saw an eclipse they could not predict. They turned the fear of the sky into knowledge. They took what was seen as the will of the gods and said, "No, this is mathematics. This is predictable. This fits in my hands." And young Elias, without knowing it, closed the circle. 2,000 years later, he pulled back out of the dark the proof that the human mind, at its very best, is capable of things that seem impossible. A sponge diver reconnected the modern world with a forgotten genius. Let us put the numbers together, because they are hard to believe. The machine is about 2,150 years old. At least 30 bronze gears survived. The teeth are about 2 millimeters across, and it lay lost at the bottom of the sea for roughly 1,900 years. It predicted eclipses with a cycle of 223 lunar months. It synchronized the sun and moon in a cycle of 19 years. It marked the Olympics every 4. All of this in a box the size of a thick book, without a single chip, without electricity, only bronze, geometry, and genius. And the most astonishing number of all, 1,400. The years it took humanity to build, once again, something with that level of mechanical complexity. 1,400 years to relearn what an anonymous Greek already knew before Christ was born. 70% of the machine is still missing. What we have are fragments, and even with only the fragments, it is the most sophisticated thing the ancient world left us. Imagine if we had the whole machine. Imagine what we still don't know. That is why it has a nickname that says it all, the first analog computer in history. It did not calculate with numbers on a screen, but with gears and motion. You entered a date, and it calculated the position of the sky, 2,000 years before the first electronic computer. So the next time someone says the ancients were primitive, remember the bronze box that slept 2,000 years at the bottom of the Aegean. Remember the 2-millimeter teeth cut by hand. Remember that they predicted eclipses while Europe was still 1,000 years from inventing the clock. And remember the diver, Elias, descending into the dark with a copper helmet, with no idea that his story would enter the books. Not knowing that the pile of the dead he saw was guarding the object that would rewrite what we thought about human intelligence. The Antikythera Mechanism is, at the same time, an answer and a mystery. It answers that yes, the Greeks were capable of mechanical wonders. And it asks, what else did they make that time erased before any diver could find it? Perhaps there are still pieces at the bottom of that sea. Perhaps there is another machine, in another shipwreck, at another point in the Mediterranean, waiting. The story of Antikythera is not closed. It is only waiting for the next dive. If this story gripped you, do one thing for me. Comment down below what shocked you the most. The 1400 years it set us back, the 2mm teeth cut by hand, or the idea that there may be a second machine still at the bottom of the sea. And if you like history told the way it deserves to be told, big, real, and impossible to forget, subscribe to World and Stories. Because the world is full of stories like this one, waiting to be found. A young sponge diver dove into the dark and brought back a 2,000-year-old computer. And the Aegean Sea, perhaps, still holds the rest of the secret. Until the next story.